Today we're going to be making something that's quite popular here in my region of Spain. This is a pickled red cabbage. It's got this nice sweet and sour flavor to it. And it's generally served on salads. Here you can find it at many restaurants atop their salad. It's absolutely delicious. The interesting thing is when we've been served this at restaurants, when I've been here with Spanish people, most people think that it is some sort of beet preparation. They think that partly because it's got this sweet flavor to it, but it's this beautiful fuchsia bright color that it turns, and it doesn't look like what you normally consider red cabbage is more of a purple color. And that is actually part of the fun of this recipe too, because it has to do with the pH of this preparation. Because it has vinegar in it and it's acidic, one of the interesting properties of red cabbage is that it changes color depending on the pH of whatever environment it's in. So here, with it being in an acidic environment with the vinegar in this preparation, it turns this bright, beautiful magenta or fuchsia pink. If this were alkaline and you added baking soda rather than vinegar, it would turn a beautiful turquoise blue. And then normally when it's at a neutral pH, of course, red cabbage is its normal color, what you're used to seeing, which is purple. This recipe is quite healthy. I did use a tablespoon of honey in this preparation, but if you're trying to really cut down on carbs, you don't have to use honey. You can use stevia, you can use some other low-calorie sweetener, or just not use any at all. I like that sweet and sour flavor though, that just a little bit of sweetener gives to it. But if you're really trying to stay healthy and avoid any type of sweetness, then you can also make this and it keeps really well and it still is delicious even without the sweet flavor. This recipe is really easy to make. All you really need is red cabbage and some vinegar and some salt. But I like to give the vinegar just a little bit of flavor. This time I used some mustard seeds and some allspice. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start with a red cabbage. Now I made all of this with the other half of this cabbage. What you really want to look for is one that has the most purple that you can find. Now if you're buying one that's already cut in half, that's really easy to see. If you're buying one that is like this on the outside, it's going to be harder to tell. But you want to avoid as much as you can all of excess white area. And what we're going to do is we're going to just first cut out this white stem area. That part we're going to discard. And we'll be slicing the rest as thinly as possible. I made mine a couple of millimeters wide, but I like it when in the restaurant they have it very thinly sliced. I think it looks really elegant and delicate on salads. Apart from removing the stem, you'll want to rinse this really well. You can remove any outer leaves that don't look good, and then just slice this as thinly as possible. Some people add the shredded cabbage directly to vinegar, but I found that it doesn't give it the same crunch and it just doesn't turn out quite the same way as if you add this to salt first and you allow the salt to extract a lot of the moisture from the cabbage. So what I do is I treat this as if I were making sauerkraut, and I slice this very thinly and then I sprinkle salt all over it. And I put a weight over it and I allow it to remove the moisture for several hours. After a few hours of having the weight on it and salt on it, you'll notice that a lot of the liquid has been extracted out. I remove this bowl up right here. If you find the cabbage isn't salty enough, you can reserve this liquid to add to it at the end. But I've never found I needed it. In fact, when you do the salting method, it's actually almost the tricky part of this recipe, getting it unsalted again. So I like to salt it and then I'll soak it for a while in water to remove as much of the excess salt as possible. You don't want it to be bland, but you don't want a salty flavored cabbage either. Throughout the desalting process, what I like to do is I like to eat these bigger, thicker pieces, and those are the ones that I try to see if the cabbage is too salty or not salty enough, because those are the ones that I don't like as much in the finished product. So I use those, I eat those, and when I find that it is no longer too salty, then I know that I can move on with the rest of the process. While you're salting the cabbage and while you're desalting it, you can use that time to infuse your vinegar with whatever spices you choose. I used allspice and mustard seeds this time, and I thought it was great, but you can use, whatever you want. What I do is I cook the vinegar with a little bit of honey and then the allspice, the mustard seeds, or whatever you choose. And then once it comes to a low simmer, I turn it off and I allow it to cool. And that's all while the cabbage is either being salted or desalting. When it comes to vinegar, you can choose whatever vinegar you have on hand. I like mild flavored vinegars for this. You can use a white vinegar or a rice vinegar. Those work really well in this recipe. I use this time a mixture of kombucha vinegar that I had left over from an old batch of kombucha and some homemade apple cider vinegar. If you want to learn how to make vinegar, I have several recipes on my other blog. One vinegar that works especially well in this recipe and is absolutely delicious in it is ginger vinegar. And ginger vinegar is actually one of my favorite recipes. I like to make fermented ginger beer. You'll find that when you're making ginger beer, a lot of times if you start with a ginger bug and you leave your ginger bug a little bit abandoned and you don't keep feeding it with new ginger and new sugar, it will start to turn acidic. And you can take advantage of that and make an absolutely delicious vinegar. And it's actually one of my favorites. It's very mild. And it also has kind of a sweet flavor to it. And I think the ginger works really well in a recipe like this one.
Once you have your cabbage desalted and your vinegar has been flavored the way you like, fill up a clean jar with all of the desalted cabbage, and you're going to want to cover it completely with your vinegar solution. You can strain out the spices if you like, and then press down on your cabbage to make sure that they're completely submerged. If you need to, you can add a little bit extra vinegar. Cover it and place it in the fridge for a couple of hours, and it will turn this beautiful pink color and become a lot more uniform in color.
I think this recipe is great. I think it's delicious. I think it's really versatile. Here it's mainly used on salads, but I think it would be a great addition to sandwiches or even a top, bratwurst. But I think even it would be great over soup, salads, anything that you can think of. And I think it's also a really great way to get kids to eat vegetables because it has that sweet flavor, and I think kids really enjoy the sweet and sour flavor. This is a great way to get kids involved, especially if you can get them in the process of helping you make this. They have lots of fun playing with the change in color from the red cabbage when you change it from basic to acidic, and you can see the beautiful range of colors that it makes. So even throughout the desalting process, one thing that I found really fun to do is to take the water that you obtain when you're soaking this to get rid of the salt, and you save that, and then kids love to play with it. You add a little bit of baking soda to some of it and see how it turns blue, and you add a little bit of vinegar to the other, to another part of it, and see how it turns pink. And kids really enjoy it, and I think it's a great opportunity for them to learn a little bit more about science and also to get more involved in the food they eat and make. I really hope you'll give this recipe a try. It's simple, it's healthy, and it's absolutely delicious. And if you like this video, I hope you will give it a like, and I would love for you to subscribe to get more recipes like this one.